Hi guys, so Ann Widdecombe was a member of the Conservative Party, then she became a member of the Brexit Party. She was an MEP for the Brexit Party, she's a member of the European Parliament, and now she's going to be interviewed by Mike Perry, who is a Brexiteer, and they're going to talk about how Britain is doing post-Brexit. So let's hear what they had to say.
To say the next guest on the show tonight is Ann Widdecombe, former Brexit Party MEP and long-standing MP in this country, and Ann is with me now. Ann, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Oh, hello, good evening.
Good evening indeed, and thanks a lot for being here. Ann, were you surprised when this statement came from Ursula von der Leyen? She said,
Von der Leyen.
Britain is a nimble speedboat racing ahead on vaccines compared to the cumbersome EU oil tanker. And considering that she's been blamed for the shocking state of the vaccine rollout in Europe, was she being a bit humble there, or was she just walking into a trap?
Well, I mean, she is the one who's made it such a slow tanker. It is incredible. I mean, Europe brought this entirely on themselves, by which I mean the European Union, not the poor citizens who aren't getting their vaccinations.
Yes.
But the EU brought it on itself. It took a long time to approve the vaccine. It poured scorn on us for having approved the vaccine.
It didn't actually, no. So this has nothing to do with Brexit. I'm sorry that Brexiteers will be disappointed by this, but this has nothing to do with Brexit. The UK was still within the transition period when it decided to say, look, we're going to go our own way and we're going to authorize this vaccine. The European Union said, you know, if you want to do that, that's your decision. It didn't pour scorn. Like, where did it pour scorn? It said, if you want to do it, you can do it. The UK is doing better than the European Union. Well done. Now, we have to see how this plays out. But in regards to the vaccine, the UK is doing much better. Like, regarding the pandemic as a total, you know, in as a whole, I don't know if you can agree, if you can say the same thing because of the number of cases, the number of deaths. So, you know, compared to individual countries within the EU, the UK is not doing very, very well when it comes to deaths. In regard to the vaccine, yes, it is. But that's not Brexit, I'm sorry to say. The most you could say, the most, how can I say, be the kindest I could be, is to say that this is a Brexiteer mentality. The idea that we're going to be, you know, an isolationist state. We're going to become a hermit nation and we're going to do things ourselves. Then that would help. But not when it came to the pandemic as a whole. And I still think it's still too early to say how this has played out. I think we'll have to wait until the end of this pandemic to understand who made the right decisions. Because yes, at the moment, the UK seems to be doing all the right things in regards to the vaccine. Not to the pandemic, but to the vaccine. In regards to the vaccine. But we'll have to see how this plays out.
We were ordering even before we'd approved the vaccines because we wanted to get ahead of the game. And the EU just followed a very cumbersome bureaucratic set of procedures. And the only people who are suffering are their citizens.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Well, yes, the citizens are suffering in regards to the vaccine. They're not getting the vaccine as quickly as the UK. But in regards to the pandemic in general, for example, here in Italy, we had something like I think it was 400 deaths the other day. The UK had 800 deaths. So, you know, in one way, the UK is doing better. In the other way, the certain EU countries are doing better.
26 countries have all got to talk to each other before they decide which vaccine to order, how many should we order, where should we order them from. I mean, it was utter chaos, wasn't it? And that, of course, has raised some really serious tensions now between the Europeans and ourselves, because although obviously Brexit's done and, you know, we're all very happy that we've got a bright new future in front of us.
Sorry, what newspapers have you been reading? Brexit is done. No, Brexit is not done. The goods part is done. The services part has not been done. The UK is going to have to sit down with the European Union and work out a trade deal in regard to services, which it doesn't have at the moment, and it will have to. And there are certain other things that have not been finalized. And I've just uploaded a video about a 68% drop in exports from the UK to the EU. I don't know how that's a success.
Hopefully, there are things happening which I'm not sure have been brought to the public's attention, which are clearly of a great concern. For instance, down in your part of the world, Anne, the shellfish industry is suffering dreadfully because of the red tape they now have to endure.
And who voted for that red tape? Ann Widdecombe voted for that red tape. Ann Widdecombe campaigned for that red tape. There was no red tape a year ago. There was no red tape 2 months ago. Now there's the red tape because the UK decided to be a third country. You can't say, we decided to be a third country and now we're being treated like a third country. How dare you treat us like a third country? How dare you treat us like the third country we wanted to be?
To get their goods over to Europe where they have a very thriving business.
Indeed, and of course also Northern Ireland is suffering. And this is all part of what Barnier was quite clear about. He said right at the start, we will punish the UK for leaving. You know,
When did he say that? Can you pull up a quote that he said we're going to punish the UK for leaving? Ann Widdecombe is lying here, or she's been extremely economic with the truth. Where did Michel Barnier say we're going to punish the UK? Now, I've said in the past that the EU would prefer other countries not to leave because it damages the single market. The EU didn't want the UK to leave, but it said, look, if you want to leave, you can leave. But if you leave, there are consequences. And the UK wanted to be outside and have the same rights and privileges as a member. And the EU said, no, you can't have that.
We've got to make sure that we deter other countries from following that example. So they're not going to make things easy for us. And they're now...
so the EU was actually making things easy for you. The EU said, look, you can be no longer a member, but you can be part of the single market and the customs union. That was fully available to the British government, Theresa May and Boris Johnson. They decided, no, we don't want that. We don't want the easy route. We want the difficult route. And now they're complaining that they've taken the difficult route.
Trying to make things very difficult indeed. They're very resentful about our success with the vaccine.
These problems started before the issues of the vaccine. What they're trying to do here is they're trying to say, oh, the reason that fishermen are not able to export their fish is because the EU is angry about the UK's success with the vaccine. Does this make sense to people? Yeah, the EU is going to invent all this paperwork that coincidentally exists also for other third countries. It's going to invent it to punish the UK for leaving the European Union. Look, I understand they believe in conspiracy theories, but this is a new one.
This is their way of hitting back, and it's indefensible.
Yeah, it is indefensible.
And okay, then what do you plan to do about it? I thought you took back control. You kept saying we need to take back control. We need to leave the European Union in order to take back control. But if the EU control how the fish get into the EU, then what can you do about it? Because if you were a member and there was some sort of restriction or some sort of problem, then you could lobby within the EU to get the problem fixed. You could veto something in order to get the problem fixed. Now you can't. You have no power. You have no power here.
And a lot of people would say, well, look, it's actually now, the behaviour of the Europeans now illustrates exactly why we were right to get out. Now,
So the reason that we can't export the fish now is the reason why it was correct to leave. That doesn't make any sense to me. So we used to be able to export our fish without problems. some Remainers said, look, if you leave, there's going to be probably restrictions. You said, no, well, the reason we're leaving is in order to face these restrictions. And that's a good thing. No, maybe I'm still not understanding.
But the point you've just made about we've got to be punished so nobody else sort of thinks about getting out, without a shadow of a doubt, other countries like, Greece and Italy and countries like that who've done so badly out of Europe must now surely be
How have they done so badly?
Thinking that if the UK can get out and get along and do a good job.
In what regard? In regard to the vaccine? So you should destroy your entire economy in order to move faster with the vaccine, even though you could actually do that. There was no requirement in regards to Brexit to get the vaccine, to authorize the vaccine. The other countries in Europe didn't do it because they looked towards the EU. The EU made a mistake. But that doesn't mean that these countries say, oh, well, that means that we should leave the European Union and destroy our economies. These people are not affected by Brexit. They're okay. They're extremely comfortable. They're not working a minimum wage job. They're not working in a company that's about to close. So they don't care about the consequences of Brexit.
Is there a real possibility, as a headline in this week's New Statesman says, that darkness falls on the European project and it might be time up?
Yes, I think time up will be a while coming.
Yep.
A while coming. I've been hearing about how the EU is about to collapse since the frigging 1990s. Since the 1990s, the European project is going to come to an end. The EC is about to come to an end. The EU is about to come to an end. Constantly, every week. Look at the... I showed recently in another video from the a list of the articles from the Express just for last year. And every one of them, EU on brink, EU on brink, EU on brink. I'm sorry, Brexiteers, the EU is not on the brink of collapse. This fiasco regarding the vaccine is extremely damaging to the EU. But it's too early to say the long-term impact it's going to have.
I don't think we're going to have EU Armageddon tomorrow. But other countries already want to follow us. It's only a few months since a poll in Italy showed just under 50% wanted to Italexit.
Yeah.
Okay, a poll in... Isn't it interesting? I actually live in Italy, Anne. And yes, there are many people who are not happy with the European Union. But it tends to be people who are already unhappy with the European Union. The far right don't like Europe, so they will always say, well, we don't want to be part of Europe. The centre left and the left are generally supportive of the European Union. So we're looking at the far right and the centre right. And since one particular party, the League Party, up until 2016, they were also campaigning for a referendum on both the Euro and the European Union. Well, they've dropped the Euro one. Sorry, they've dropped the EU referendum, but they've kept the Euro one because they want to keep it on the back burner, because it's very easy to blame the Euro on a lot of problems that Italy is facing. Italy's problems are not the European Union. Italy's problems are not the Euro. Italy's problems are internal political issues. But it's very easy and convenient for politicians just to blame the EU. And if you go out and carry out a poll with a particular section of society, that will reinforce that point.
We know there's a campaign in France itself, the very heart of the European Union, for Brexit. And certainly small countries.
See, when you're in a cult, when you're in a particular religion, it's not enough that you believe it. You have to have other people believe it too. And Brexit is like a cult where, wouldn't you think Ann Widdecombe would be, okay, we've got our Brexit, fine, let's move on. No, they need other people to believe in it too. They need France to support some type of Brexit. They want Italy to exit as well, because it's not enough that they believe in it. Everyone else has to believe in it too. Wouldn't you think that people who got what they wanted would be satisfied? Ann Widdecombe campaigned for Brexit. She got her Brexit. And she's still angry. She's still unsatisfied. She wants other countries to join too. And let's say the entire European Union collapses and there is no European Union. What will these people complain about then? Will they be happy? Of course they won't. Then move on to the next issue to be angry about. How is it that people who won something, who got what they wanted, are still angry?
Countries that have suffered very badly from the EU hegemony of France and Germany.
Yes.
Certainly there are small countries like Greece, as you point out, but also the Eastern Bloc countries like Hungary, who just want, well, I don't say they want out at the moment, but they're certainly looking in that direction.
Yeah.
Therefore, the EU is desperate to make Brexit a failure.
Yeah. Oh, no, I totally...
The EU didn't make Brexit a failure. You people made Brexit a failure. If Brexit was... Their idea is that Brexit is a failure because the EU has treated the UK as a third country, which it voted to become. Now, because businesses thought everything was going to be great, because they listened to the likes of Ann Widdecombe, well, I'm sorry, that's the business's fault. If people voted for the Brexit Party thinking that things would get better, I'm sorry, that's their fault. The Brexit Party were never about making Britain great, improving people's lives or their livelihoods. It was a grift. They wanted to make money from the situation, and Nigel Farage wants attention. That's what it's all been about. Money for some people and attention for others. And in order to do so, you have to convince people to vote against their own interests. I've been saying this from the very beginning. The right wing are very good at convincing the poor to vote against their own interests. People who work in industries that require trade with the European Union. They came out and voted in large numbers against that. Against free trade with the European Union. They convinced poor people to be against immigrants. Because the immigrants are coming in to take your jobs. They're coming here to take everything that you own. These people have been pumping out this type of propaganda for ages. And they will continue to do so.
I totally agree. So how are we expected then to have civilised relationships with the European countries and the European bloc if they are quite maliciously starting to introduce problems of their own making to the...
They didn't introduce these problems. You did. You decided these problems. The European Union said you can be part of the single market and the customs union. You said no. We don't want that. We want our quote-unquote clean break Brexit. Remember that Ann Widdecombe wanted to leave without a deal. Can you imagine the situation for the fishermen or anyone if there was no actual trade deal? The trade deal is crap. But it'd be much worse if there was no deal. These people, including this idiot on the screen here, he wanted a no-deal Brexit.
The trading process. I mean, the shellfish industry, for instance, down in the southwest of England, they're in real trouble. Now, are we...
Why the hell, Jesus Christ, why the hell do you think they're in trouble? Because of Brexit. It's not because the European Union said... The European Union and Remainers, or as you like to call them, Ramoners, kept saying, if you leave, there are going to be consequences. And your response every time was, this is a Project Fear, this is scaremongering, there won't be any problems. But now there are problems. And instead of actually acknowledging, we were wrong, it's someone else's fault.
Just going to sit down and say, stand back and say, oh, well, that's just the Europeans? Or are we actively fighting this and telling the Europeans, get real?
Get real. You have no power here, Ann Widdecombe and this other guy. You're trying, what do you expect? What do you expect the British government to do? Even if it was about, let's get real, and Boris Johnson hasn't gone to Brussels. Boris Johnson hasn't even called up, You know, he hadn't even gotten out of his lazy chair and actually called Ursula von der Leyen. Like, you're talking about, yeah, we need to get tough. We need to get tough. Tough in what way? Like, I actually believed that for propaganda purposes, that maybe Boris Johnson, because of this chaos on the border, Boris Johnson would actually go to Brussels and appear as if he was doing something. But he didn't even do that. And that was my mistake, because I thought, you know, I should have remembered that when there was the floods, Boris Johnson didn't bother even to go and meet the people who were suffering because their homes were full of water. He didn't bother until, you know, a week later, and it was, okay, I have to go. Oh, crap, I have to go. I have to go and meet these poor people. These unwashed poor people. And you're now expecting Boris Johnson and the Tories to, you know, put up a fight, go to Brussels and, you know, have it out with the European Union. They can't. Because at least they know, well, I hope they understand, that it's too late. If they go to the European Union and bang their fist on the table, we demand that our goods cross into the EU without checks. And the European Union said, I'm sorry, we gave you that option. And you said no. Now, please leave the office.
Well, at the moment, of course, it's all being done through diplomacy, and I strongly expect that will get absolutely nowhere because the EU has no interest in helping our fishing industry.
Why should it? Why should it? Give me a reason why the EU should undermine its single market to help fishermen who voted to become a third country. These fishermen, it would make more sense for these fishermen to go and have a chat with Ann Widdecombe, to go and have a chat with Nigel Farage, to have a chat with Michael Gove, to have a chat with Jacob Rees-Mogg, and explain, ask Ann Widdecombe and Jacob Rees-Mogg to explain why they said things would get better and now things have gotten worse.
And I have to say that fishing, as far as the Brexit deal went, was a massive sellout.
Yeah.
Of course, I blame the EU for what's happening to shellfish at the moment.
See, it's always somebody else's fault. Yeah, it was a sellout. What you didn't want a deal. Can you imagine if the situation had been that there was no deal? The fishermen wouldn't just be facing the restrictions on the border by, you know, paperwork problems. They'd also face probably tariffs as well. So imagine you're a fisherman. Okay, I have all these problems. I have to try and ship my fish, and I have mountains of paperwork. And then also, if it had gone Ann Widdecombe's way, they would have also had to pay extra for it.
But I also blame Boris for a massive sellout of our fishing industry in the Brexit deal. But to come to your central question, which is,
yes,
do we start hitting back? I think the answer is yes. I mean, by all means, try the diplomatic routes first. Let's be grown-ups. Let's see if we can talk. Do all that by all means. But the time may well come when we have to say, okay, if you won't have our shellfish, we won't have your cheese.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's not very professional of me to laugh like this, but I actually thought she was going to go down the gunboat diplomacy route. Honestly, I haven't actually listened to this entire interview. I just went, okay, I'll put it on and see how it goes. If you don't buy our fish, we won't buy your cheese. And the USA, okay. Now, please leave the office. We've already seen the results of that. Businesses who used to sell into the EU, are deciding, look, if it's a problem to sell into the UK, sorry, if businesses in the EU are saying, look, if it's a problem to sell into the UK, we'll sell somewhere else. I'm sorry, Anne, you don't hold all the cards. The rhetoric of they need us more than we need them isn't working. Now, of course, it's easy to sell into the UK at the moment because there are no controls on the border. But that's a decision by the British government. Look, if you want to play the trade war, you're probably fighting with the wrong group, because if the EU say, okay, we're not going to sell our produce into the UK, who's going to suffer? Ann Widdecombe wants to fight a battle where she's not going to suffer any consequences, but the British people will. So she said, yeah, we won't buy your cheese. Okay. And what about the other things? Fruit and vegetables. You're not going to buy those either? What? She lives in this parallel universe where she thinks that the UK can decide the rules on importing into the EU, and she believes that, yeah, well, we can fight a trade war. I'm sorry, you can't. We've seen how businesses in the EU who wanted to import from the UK are deciding, look, it's not feasible anymore, because we have to pay extra costs. We have to pay import duty. We have to complete paperwork. I've done videos about this. If I want to buy something people wanted to buy stuff from Amazon in the UK. They decided, look, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to buy it from Amazon in Germany. These are people living in the EU. And I feel bad for the businesses in the UK who want to export. They're suffering the consequences of this. Many of them didn't vote for that. And Ann Widdecombe's response is, we need to be tough with the EU. This is absolute insanity. Anyway, guys, I'll leave a link to the entire video in the description if you want to watch it all. Let me know in the comments section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?